Wisconsin?
This evening, and then probably an early night. So that's kind of
Early, so you won't be up for the gut.
Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I am doing this show on December 31st. Thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. Please help support the work that I do by making sure you subscribe to all the channels. I have YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. You can also follow me on TikTok, Substack, Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee. You can donate on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support the work that I do. All this is for free. I give you my perspective on the news, and we figure out a way to make some money during the breaking news throughout the trading day. Now, you can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee on my website. You can also be a paid member to my Substack and Patreon channel. Again, all of these videos are for free. It's the ones that help support the work through donations and purchasing the products that allows me to do this. You can get ebooks on my website, course material on immunology and pulmonology. You can get free live streams of my shows under broadcast. You can listen to the archive of my podcasts on my website, and you can now start reading top news that is being generated, populated on the website daily. So it's called paper. So go to broadcast. You can see the live streams, the archive podcasts, and also read the articles that are the top news for that day. I have a timestamp, the date, and the actual time that it's generated. So please take a look at that. I'm going to increase the capability of paper. So please read the articles and help support the work. Get the products that I have. Very high quality. If you follow the protocol that I do, you'll slow down the aging process and boost up your immune system, and you'll have more vitality. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the products like Cleanse and Max 35. Cleanse and Max 35 will help to boost up that immune system. Max 35 is 35 parts per million. Cleanse is 30 parts per million. They're at different price points, but you take them the same way. Teaspoon a day, every day, swish it in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds, and then swallow. What this will do is boost up the immune system, neutralize, improve your oral cavity and your oral pharynx, maintain the mucosal barrier, and improve the health of your epithelial cells. When you do that, you're boosting up your immune system. If you're not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two. Or if someone around you is not feeling well, take it prophylactically with a tablespoon or two as a dosage. Once everything is all clear, you can go back to your maintenance dose of a teaspoon a day. I've been doing this protocol for over 5 years. So please go to my store, get the Cleanse or the Max 35, take it every day. All right, let's listen into Bloomberg, and then we're going to go to Neil Ferguson's 2026 predictions. Again, make sure that you listen to my latest show with John Hogue. I believe it was Fuse episode 53. We go over the 2026 predictions by John Hogue, but also we go deeper into some metaphysics based on the callers that called into the show. I meet with John every other week or so. We take callers' questions, and then wherever the conversation goes, that's the way the show is. It's very loosely constructed. So please listen to that show live. It's usually every 2 weeks on a Sunday at 10 p.m. Okay, with that, let's listen into Bloomberg.
Maybe 750. And I remember when it came down to 250, and Joe Weisenthal messaged me. He said, dude, if you liked it at 600, you should love it here. And I thought, I do. But since I lack any kind of courage, I have zero conviction. I didn't buy it. Even when I saw it tick down to 750. Joe Weisenthal tells you to do it. That's a pretty good recommendation.
The lesson is hold on to dear life, or timing the market is more important than timing the market, according to all the PMs I talked to.
Give me one laggard in the Max 7.
Laggard.
Without looking, I'm going to say it was only. That's not in the Mac 7.
Oh, not on the Mac 7.
I think Amazon is.
That
I think
I was saying Amazon got looking, yeah.
Amazon, yeah,
but somebody.
it had a good performance. They had a growth-driven year.
Year to date, Amazon's up
Yeah.
5%, but Google's up 65%. So
Who's enjoying their life more than Jeff
Apple
Bezos?
is. Oh.
that guy also ripped. He's just absolutely.
I know, but I mean, every time I see him on social media, he's having a good time.
I think he
That's exactly what I
was in a boat in the last video I saw, or in an island.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense, either in a rocket or a boat. All right, Isabel, Happy New Year to you
Happy New Year to me.
and to your parents who already live in 2026.
Yes, they're in the future.
Isabel Lee, they're looking at some of the stocks for us now. AI, obviously, the driver of last year, the year before, and really the year before that, driving demand for cybersecurity as well, as more industries adopt the technology. And Bloomberg Intelligence says expect more cyber spending and consolidation in the sector. Let's discuss that with Teresa Payton. She's the CEO of Fortalice Solutions.
Definitely.
She was the
Definitely.
White House.
Everyone's data is being read, and different softwares are accessing your corporate database to train the models. Cybersecurity is going to be very, very lucrative business.
On a happy New Year's Eve. And yes, I'm predicting everyone needs to get ready for a new wave of attacks that we have never seen before, because cyber criminals, as we get better at cybersecurity, they don't give up and suddenly say, gosh, maybe I should be a good person because they've made it harder for me now. They just up their game. And so be prepared with AI, I think quantum computing could be available by the end of 2026. And quantum computing is going to be incredible for
I don't believe for
the
the average person that quantum computing is going to be available. I don't see that happening at all. Really close.
Sure, if it's friend or foe here in your world of cyber, just technical security, how do you think about it?
Well, as sort of, for mankind, quantum computing, if we do it right and get it right on sort of the environmental impacts and issues, is going to be incredible. It's going to allow us to solve problems that we haven't solved before, because massive amounts of data volumes, mathematical problems, and we truly will see breakthroughs, I believe, in healthcare, protecting the environment, and a lot of other issues on everybody's minds. However, in the wrong hands, it's a tool, and so the tool
With
is
healthcare, what possibly could happen is that with quantum computing, it can speed up the calculations, maybe definitely in system analysis of a cell or tissues or organ systems. So simulating maybe the effects of a certain drug, or simulating the actual topology attachments of certain proteins to certain other proteins. But the thing is that when it comes to medicine, you still have to validate it. So even if you do in silico advanced computation, you still have to go through the rigors of testing before that drug is proven, or that process that the simulation is saying is happening is actually happening. So it's going to slow down. It's going to be slowed down because of the validation in the real world. All right. So yes, computation will speed up. Overall drug discovery and understanding how the body works will increase, but it still needs to be validated in the real world setting. And therefore, there's always this bottleneck that AI isn't going to be able to fix, because you can't speed up reality, right? So you got to keep that in mind. So there's going to be some benefits, but there are also bottlenecks that AI in quantum computing cannot fix.
What are the risks that we're not even thinking about yet? I mean, it just seems like every time I see a hacking story, it's like, I never even would have thought of that. But there it is here. Are there some things that are really worrying you in the back of your mind?
Yeah, I think if you sort of look at my top 5 list of things I'm worried about going into 2026.
Cyber war.
One is around the various AI implementations that have been happening. The lack of governance and guardrails also means that things are going to market and it may not be secure by design. And we're going to find out the hard way where the security is lacking in these different platforms. I think the second thing that I'm concerned about is, again, AI is going to be an incredible tool, a great productivity enhancement for a lot of businesses. It's going to democratize data, so you no longer have to be the largest company with the best data scientists now to be able to actually leverage and monetize your own data. But with that powerful tool comes, responsibilities, and it could end up in the hands, we've already seen this year, of cyber criminal syndicates trying to use it to create malware, to create ransomware, to create different types of attack vectors and take advantage of where we've missed out on secure by design in our software stack.
Hey, you served, Teresa, in a Republican administration as CIO under President George W. Bush. What do you think of this Republican administration and its effects on cybersecurity?
Well, I'd like to think that regardless of party, that the United States has dedicated public servants in all the departments and agencies who are very focused on security by design.
But sometimes we fire all those dedicated public servants and replace them with Fox News hosts. So what do you think there? How would you grade them?
Well, what I would say is I would focus on the cybersecurity strategy for the administration. If I were advising them, I would tell them you need to give a clear and consistent message. You need to let people know who's going to be in charge. We still, have an acting situation over at DHS with cybersecurity. And I would say the things that you are keeping that are good, and then the things that you are changing to reflect the changes in our modern technology infrastructure. A lot of the things that we are doing the last 10 to 15 years are not necessarily going to serve us. So it has been a very challenging time for many of the people that have been impacted by the layoffs in government. But we need to look at an opportunity to say, who wants to do public service and what do we need to do next with all of this new technology that's being implemented, not just in the departments and agencies, but also in our critical infrastructure, which really needs attention.
Teresa, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate chatting with you. Teresa Payton, she's the CEO of Fortalice Solutions, talking about cybersecurity. You think about an industry that's going to be in demand forever. I can't think of a time when it won't be. Cybersecurity is one of them. So, it's kind of like the plastics was back in the 60s, and I think cybersecurity is it for coming up. Coming up, the world's richest people saw their net worth jump by a record in 2025. Details are coming up next, with the S&P down 20 points. This is Bloomberg. Good morning.
I don't think quantum computing is going to be anywhere near prime time. You might get some quantum computing at the laboratory level, maybe at the military level, but at the research military level, it's not ready for prime time. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Clarity Factor. Clarity Factor is going to help with getting rid of that brain fog, allow you to concentrate on tasks. It's going to increase your dendritic connections, so you're going to be thinking faster and you'll have better memory. This is a very powerful neural stack that's going to help the health of your brain. So please go to my store, drink filtered water, and take the Clarity Factor every day. It's super important. All right, I want to listen into the Ferguson's forecast that was being interviewed on the Free Press. It was published about 5 hours.
Well, Ellie, I wouldn't call this a calm year when you look across the globe. There was sort of no shortage of upheaval, as we know personally, not from being there, but from being up late covering things. Just a few of the things to name. The US and Israel attacked Iran's nuclear sites. Nellie and I were supposed to go to Israel days later. That was, of course, canceled. Ukraine spent another year in its bloody war with Russia. Trump unleashed a trade war with China. That was later rolled back, which we'll talk about. And then there was this ceasefire in Gaza, but Hamas is kind of still in power / refusing to disband or disarm.
So yeah, a quiet year for anyone in the news
It's been
business,
super relaxing.
and a lot of things unresolved. You know, even though we've had these big peace deals that the president likes to talk about. So someone who's helped us make sense of 2025 and someone who is going to help us make sense of 2026 is Free Press columnist Neil Ferguson. Neil's a historian. He's a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution at Stanford. He's written dozens of books. And he really is our go-to guy on the big geopolitical questions, both in print and on our podcasts. And so I think we should give Neil a ring.
Let's do it. Neil Ferguson, welcome to Honestly.
Well, hello.
Hi, Ollie just gave you this very nice.
Accountants who lead don't waste time. They invest in the CMA. CMA, Confidence Certified.
You ready?
Yeah, come go.
Hi, Ollie just gave you this very nice setup as a person who we turn to, but I have to admit that the more I'm reading you, the more scared I am about what could be coming. It feels to me like we're in a pre-war time. I mean, you've defined this time as a second Cold War, but that war seems to be heating up more and more.
I think, honestly, he's been promoting the Cold War 2.0 for a while. I think it's turned into a hot war since 2022, when Putin actually invaded Ukraine. The thing is, because of nuclear deterrence, the MAD strategy, satellites being able to look over into regions with high fidelity, figuring out what's really going on, has slowed down the kinetic pace of a world war. But we are in a world war already. We're in World War III.
You're talking about the President of Peace is in the newly remodeled White House, and it's raining peace prizes. 2026 is clearly going to be the year when Immanuel Kant's state of perpetual peace arrives, and it really will just remain for us to remind ourselves of the lyrics of John Lennon's Imagine and sing them along with Democrats and Republicans alike, or maybe not. I think the framing remains, and I think this has been true certainly since 2018, maybe since Xi Jinping came to power in 2012, that we're in Cold War II. The People's Republic of China took the place of the Soviet Union. We didn't really notice because we thought that history had ended and the world was just going to live happily ever after. But Cold War II brings with it certain predictable consequences. There are two superpowers. They're engaged in a competition in the realm of technology, in the realm of military hardware, in the realm of contested geographies, in the realm of ideologies. That's a Cold War. That's where we are. And
the thing is, during the Cold War, it took a lot of investment, a lot of espionage, and it was over multiple decades. What we're seeing with this is just that we're already in a kinetic situation in Ukraine, kinetic situations in the Middle East, and a rising kinetic situation in Asia. Not to mention what's going on in Venezuela. In 2026, we're going to have a major operation that takes place to destroy Maduro's regime. So it's kinetic. Another feature that's different between what's going on now and the Cold War is that during the Cold War, it ran its course with a whimper. It didn't end in a bang. It went with people rising up, and the Berlin Wall fell, and Russia, I should say the Soviet Union, collapsed. And then there were growing pains of having Russia get into a more free market. What's different here is the expansionism of China and the rising power of China relative to a super hegemonic power of the United States. So this epoch that we're in isn't going to just last for decades and then just go out in a whimper. This seems like, because of Xi's focus of getting Taiwan and affecting the stability of the second and third island chains, is going to lead to a kinetic situation between the United States and China. So it's not a Cold War. It's a World War already, just slower. So it's easy to fall into the trap to think that this is all just going to be a Cold War and we're going to be able to do a containment of China. But when they start expanding, what's the United States going to do? Why does China, if they want Taiwan, building a major aircraft fleet, naval aircraft fleet, aircraft carriers? Why? Unless they want a blue water navy. Now, what does that mean? A blue water navy means taking the second and third island chains. That's a direct threat to the United States. Because if you take a look at the map, especially a satellite version of a map, you'll notice that the archipelago of Alaska goes pretty far, and also the island chains for Hawaii. Hawaii's not just 5. Hawaii's about 137 islands that most people don't know about. So it extends very far. And those islands are at risk with a blue water navy from the PLA. Or PLN, if I want to be fully correct here. But the Chinese Navy will threaten the second and third island chains with their aircraft carriers. They don't need aircraft carriers for Taiwan, or not as many as they're making, unless they want to check the hegemonic power of the United States, not just in the 9-dash line, but also in the second and third island chains. That means a direct threat to Hawaii and Alaska. This is way bigger than Cold War. This is going to end up in a hot war. And we're in a hot war.
As in the first Cold War, there are hotspots. There are places where hot war happens. We're going to be hitting the 4th anniversary of the outbreak of the full-blown war in.
But most of those hot wars were against proxies, a proxy war. All right, so we're fighting in Vietnam. The United States was fighting in Vietnam. It was a proxy war between communism and capitalism in Vietnam. The Cold War was this frozen situation in Europe where Russia took the satellite countries, under the umbrella of the Soviet Union. The Western Europe started to flourish and Eastern Europe started to crumble. What's more important in this epoch isn't Russia, it's China. And China is directly going to be threatening the United States. Russia's freezing of the satellites in its orbit, that wasn't a direct threat to the United States. It was a direct threat to the Europeans. But what's happening here in the Pacific is a direct threat of the freedom of navigation for our economic prosperity, but also freedom of navigation for our military. It's different. What's happening in Asia is different. Now the question is what we're going to do about it.
Ukraine back in February 2022. That's February. We're going to see the ongoing conflict that Israel's engaged in on multiple fronts, mostly with proxies of the Islamic Republic, and there's ongoing tension around the island of Taiwan, which is probably the nearest thing to Cuba in.
So what happened? Let's say in 2026, maybe maybe Article 5 is activated with NATO. Would he eventually start to admit that it's hot war, World War III by then? And the alliance that has constituted against China. When China attacks Japan or attacks Korea, or South Korea, I mean, or attacks Taiwan, what are they? The allied nations are going to be activated. Is that when you start saying it's World War? The moment there is a high probability that in Trump's administration that Taiwan is going to be attacked by China, or China makes a miscalculation with Japan and or with the United States, and that leads to conflict.
World War II. So that's how to think about 2026. I think President Trump sincerely wants to try and end conflict.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But it's much easier to start a war, ask Vladimir Putin, than it is to end one. And that's one of the lessons of 2025, I think.
Well, Neil, let's sort of go deeper into some.
If you want to have a job in the next 5 years, these are the AI rules you need to know.
Neil, let's sort of go deeper into some of the hotspots. When Norah O'Donnell sat down for 60 Minutes with Donald Trump, he literally pulled out a piece of paper that he had printed out with all of the peace deals he had made around the world. And of course, the most famous of these is the ceasefire in Gaza. Now, Trump, of course, has declared an end to the war. There's technically a ceasefire. And yet, it seems like Hamas is still in power in Gaza. So who actually rules Gaza? And what can we expect in that territory in 2026?
Well, the first thing is to acknowledge that major success was achieved by US diplomacy. And I think that owed quite a bit to the involvement of the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who, when he joined forces with Steve Witkoff, brought to bear his whole, I guess, network plus his experience in the region. And that meant that the key issue was resolved. The remaining surviving hostages that were still held captive by Hamas were released. And a kind of peace, I say kind of peace because it's not exactly tranquil there, but a kind of peace was achieved in Gaza, leaving Hamas in control of parts of Gaza, but not all of it, because in effect, Gaza has been divided, and a substantial part of it is actually under, well, in practice, Israeli control. The problem with Hamas is it's very difficult entirely to annihilate it. The Israeli Defense Forces had a pretty good go at this and certainly inflicted very serious damage on the organization. But it's still there in that rump of Gaza that it controls, and it's still using brutal violence to ensure that the local population doesn't question its authority. So that was an important moment and a meaningful success for President Trump, because it had been enormously difficult to resolve the problem ever since October 7, 2023, because Israel found itself in the wake of those appalling atrocities that you and I discussed more than once, Barry, having to do two incompatible things: destroy Hamas and rescue the hostages. It was pretty much impossible to do both those things. Now it can focus on destroying Hamas without having to be concerned about hostages. But I'd just like to add one broader point. It always was a mistake of media coverage to focus on Gaza as if it was the only game or the only war in town. Israel's actually been fighting on 7 different fronts. It has been dealing not only with Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, but also with Hezbollah in Lebanon. It had to contend with the Houthis. It had problems coming at it from multiple directions, including, until quite recently, from Syria. And so you have to really understand the Middle East in a slightly broader framework than just Gaza. And I think in that sense, the real story of 2025 was that Iran and its proxies suffered multiple defeats, right, all of which significantly weakened it, of which the most important was clearly the destruction or semi-destruction.
And the thing is that we didn't fully knock out Iran. And if you pay attention to the news right now, it looks like going into 2026, Iran is going to have internal strife, and that internal strife will lead to having the mullahs orchestrate some sort of kinetic event in the Middle East to try to usher in their version of, apocalyptic times. Now, I've been saying for a long time here, the mistakes that have been made in 2023 all the way up to the present time are going to rear its head on September 11th, 2026, all the way through the first or second week of October of 2027. There is going to be what I call a curse. There's going to be negative externalities that is directly tied into mistakes that we've made economically, the way we're using AI, the way that the war was conducted in the Middle East, the way we are not ramping down the conflict in Ukraine, the push from President Xi to take Taiwan while his economy is suffering and there's political instability that's starting to emerge within the one-party system. There's a lot that's going to happen where there's going to be a curse that comes. And it doesn't take much for it to tip into a full-blown kinetic worldwide situation. And I think the way that with containment, with technology, with the speed of information because of the internet and news 24 hours, right? And news networks all over the world, speed of information, the mad strategy with nuclear deterrence has slowed down the potential wildfire that can happen, that happened in, let's say, World War I or World War II. Right? So speed of information and dialogue, mad strategy, mutual assured destruction strategy with nuclear weapons has slowed down the pace of world war. All right? You could be in a world war, but it's slower. But as the potential energy, because it's slower, it takes longer for the potential energy to reach a certain critical mass where it's a full-blown, what we would consider a world war. Now, if he wants to define it as a Cold War in that setting, then okay. But a Cold War to me is it never goes really global kinetic. I think there's high probability that it will. And in many cases, I think in many ways to analyze this argument, you could say it's already happening right now. But it's a slower, it's more slowed down. When you don't get information, right, powers that be can accelerate the process faster, such as World War I, World War II. But when you have a whole world getting information and seeing what's happening in real time to the best that news networks can do, because of course there's nefarious actors and there's going to be propaganda and all that. But news in its raw form does propagate through the world much quicker now than ever before. So it's harder to get that wildfire started, especially if there's a false flag or some sort of propaganda that's taking place to start it, to really have it go super kinetic. But we're already in a kinetic phase. Now, it is true that there were kinetic phases during the Cold War. But this rising power economically, Russia has never been, and the Soviet Union has never been really an economic power against the United States, ever. China is. China is the Thucydides trap. All right. And the question is, how will the United States handle this? As the dominant power, are we going to lose or not? Now, it is possible that the United States spends lots of money, lots of blood to try to win a war against China, and let's say it is successful, but is weakened economically so much that it becomes a empire in retreat, very similar to the UK. It is an empire in retreat after World War I. Some might even say before World War I, but let's just say the delineation point was after World War I. Sure, definitely lost ground after World War II. But World War I was a major inflection point, I think, for the UK in terms of its global dominance. And the United States rose. We weren't affected by the war. Our manufacturing was intact. But what happens when our manufacturing is not intact? What happens when our military prowess is diminished? And we already have major debt issues because of Lehman crash, because of 9/11, because of the war in the Middle East, and because of COVID. We can't afford a major war effort against China like we did against Japan or against Germany back in World War II. We can't afford it. We literally can't afford it. Our inventories get depleted so rapidly with each of these smart bombs or smart missiles that the quantity isn't there, and each weapon system is so costly. Now, some people say that when it goes kinetic with China, that it's going to be a 12-minute event. I'm not sure what that means. Does that mean nuclear? Does that mean we run out of ammunition so quickly? It becomes so costly. War is becoming so costly it can't even be done anymore. So this big war with China and the United States, if the United States loses, we've lost the empire. If the United States wins, we may still lose the empire, because the amount of effort and money that will be needed to be able to win that. We're not in a good situation. We are not financially stable to be able to have a sustained war effort against China. I don't think China is either. I don't think China has the technology compared to the United States, nor I think there's internal strife within the country. I think China, if it was left to a multi-party or even a two-party system, that it would not be as cohesive. That the one-party system forces the cohesion of the country. But I think the country wants to naturally break up.
Of the nuclear facility at Fordo by US stealth bombers. Where do we go from here? Well, where we go from here is ongoing conflict in a number of those theaters, because this story ain't over. Iran is beginning to rebuild its...
So does that sound like a Cold War? where you had hegemonic powers playing the chessboard in proxy wars? Or does it seem like it's more of a slow burning world war? And I think that if you really sit down and analyze this, after 2022, it has been a slow burning world war. And when you layer in the metaphysics of this, there's a curse coming, just like there was a curse in 2008. We became greedy, and people started, the whole economy started convulsing. An asteroid hit New York because of credit default swaps and greed, a lack of regulation. Poor war planning and execution led to trillions of dollars wasted in the Middle East to fight people that are living in the Stone Age. The reality of the situation is an advanced country like the United States can't win a war against people that are living in the Stone Age. The Stone Age people can't defeat a major power like the United States, but the United States can't. You can't bomb someone back into the Stone Age if they're already in it. So waste, total waste, total waste. So we didn't get anything out of Iraq or Afghanistan post 9/11. The last soldiers died, and guess what? Wasted trillions of dollars. There's a curse coming. Do you think that the economic situation is good? It's teetering. Maybe inflation starts spiking up. Unemployment may be starting to go up. Wait, it's people feel uneasy. Layer in a war. How do you think things are going to be? What about the prospects of the job market with the uncertainty of AI? Curse is coming. A curse is coming. And it's going to start on September 11th, 2026. And it's going to go all the way through the first or second week of October of 2027. There's a curse coming.
Seriously damaged nuclear capabilities. It is trying to revive its economy. That's not easy. They're in the grip of a dreadful water shortage. And Benjamin Netanyahu, the ultimate survivor of Israeli politics, has to decide between now and the election that has to happen in October what to do. Does he hit Iran again? I think he probably does, because why let these guys rebuild when you had them on their knees last year? Challenge for him is that the more pressure he exerts, particularly on Iran, but more generally, the more he flexes in the region, the more ambivalence in the United States will become apparent. And I don't just mean the hostility of people on the left, which has been going on for some time. I think I'm really more concerned about the hostility on the right, on the far right of American politics towards Israel, which has been one of the really striking developments of the past 12 months.
And because of the way the American First policy is, there's going to be a judgment. And this is why I'm saying everyone is going to get cursed. Everybody. Israelis, Jews, Christians, Muslims, American citizens, Chinese, everyone in the world is going to be cursed when this door opens up on September 11th, 2026, on sundown. That's when the door opens up and the curse comes down. And that door doesn't close until the first or second week of October of 2027. So 9/11, 2026, the door opens up at sundown. And it's because of how the world looked at the situation on October 7th. Do you think America's financial capability to absorb a shock, economic shock, or a military shock is better now than 2023? You're not paying attention. 2026, we're in a worse situation. Not better. Not better. So he's saying it in a different way. I'm saying it in a metaphysical way. That a curse is coming because of the way people acted. America First policy is literally one of the main reasons why the curse is coming.
Before we move on, let's just on Iran. I mean, there's the Israel-Iran
Right.
dynamic.
Before we do the Iranian thing, because I think that in 2026, the United States and Israel will probably have to conduct further bombing runs. Now, the way I'm playing this is that I hope they do. One, I think that the Ayatollah should be killed. And the people of Iran will be able, the secular society will be able to have a democracy. The theocratic regime of Iran needs to die. And the United States should have done it when we did the bombing run against the nuclear facilities. But Trump chickened out. Trump always chickens out. Trump worries me at times. But before we go into that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver soaps. These are very high quality soaps that will help the health of your skin. And it neutralizes because it's structural nano silver. You can get it in lavender and peppermint. You can also get lemongrass and charcoal tea tree. Very high quality soaps. Get a few bars for your household. Help support the work that I do. And help support the health of your skin. Use discount 5 to get $5 off any order. Also get magnesium and zinc. Magnesium and zinc will help to boost up your immune system and your brain function. Super important. Especially when you get older, you need to take supplements that help with brain function. Get the magnesium and zinc, boost up that immune system, especially for the winter season. And take this every day, and you're going to help with your brain function. Super important. You're helping with your immune system. When your immune system is good, guess what? You slow down the aging process. So please go to my store, get the magnesium and zinc, and help your brain function and your immune system. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
Of the stability of the Iranian regime. You know, we see now young women in Iran walking around without hijabs in the way they couldn't not so long ago. The kind of open defiance that suggests a regime that doesn't feel as strong as it once did. What are your predictions of how things look in Iran internally in 2026, and whether there could be some kind of instability there that changes things geopolitically?
Well, I think there's a great.
File free in the app if you didn't file with us last year. Just file with TurboTax Do It Yourself by February 28th. No matter your tax situation, get the TurboTax app now.
All right.
Good morning. I'm here. What is your? Do you guys have like a thing? Cut the juice is a promo.
Well, I think there is a great danger in inferring from protests in Tehran a probability of regime change or regime crisis in Iran as a whole. The regime has proved remarkably effective at withstanding popular protests year after year, and so I'm not about to predict its downfall. It's hard to believe that Supreme Leader Khamenei will still be alive at the end of 2026 because he's so old. And in fact, it's remarkable that he got through 2025. The bigger problem for the regime, I think, is what they do when he dies. And can they manage a transition when they don't have a succession plan? They don't have a successor to what I imagine will be an IRGC, a Revolutionary Guard-led military type regime. I think one of the big questions for the Israeli government and the US government is what's the right thing to do to help that regime collapse? I don't think Mr. Netanyahu cares about regime change. I think he likes the idea of regime collapse. And indeed, the United States can't come up with a credible story about what the regime would change to, so it probably implicitly is on side with regime collapse. It's just hard to bring that about. And my own view is it's extremely difficult to imagine a peaceful transition to a more friendly Iranian regime if the process has Israeli fingerprints on it. And that, I think, is one of the central strategic dilemmas, not only for Mr. Netanyahu, but also for Mr. Trump.
Okay, let's turn now from Iran to Eastern Europe. Let's go to the war in Ukraine, a subject you've written about for us an enormous amount. All of it's fantastic. Those who haven't read Neil on Ukraine, go to the Free Press right now. So just to review for people who have kind of tuned out that war, Russia's invasion of Ukraine began in 2022. And in the early months, there was widespread optimism, I would say, about Ukraine's ability to win the war. We're 4 years in. You tell me how many people have been killed so far in this war, Neil. How many?
Oh, nobody really knows, but the Russian casualties are certainly in the hundreds of thousands. It has been an enormously bloody war. We don't know the Ukrainian death tolls. We can only guess, probably not as high because they've mostly been on the defensive. But this has been a very bloody war, partly because the weaponry has become very accurate. Drones are very reliable ways of killing people. And so it's a desperately dangerous front line where the conflict goes on. But the casualties are also mounting on the home front, particularly for Ukraine, because this past year was the year when the Russians turned to terror bombing of civilians with drones and with missiles as a deliberate strategy. So the body count is high and rising.
So the question is how this
just to interject, through this recording, the S&P 500 is trading at 6,877. I've been saying that I had a target. I've been saying this all the way back to April of 2025, that I had a target of 6,850 to 6,900. It's trading at right now 6,876. Not bad. I told you what to do. If you paid attention to me during April 2nd all the way to now, you would have earned close to a 20% return or more, depending on how you were dollar cost averaging in. All right? But the thing is that if you paid attention to me back in April, you would have beat the market just in the S&P 500. If you'd been paying attention to me in the oil market, you would have made a lot of money too. Now, what's Dr. Paul Cottrell doing right now? Longing natural gas futures and longing oil futures. All right? Because I suspect that when we hit Venezuela, there's going to be a $4 to $5 increase in oil. It's going to be fleeting. So you position, wait. Once it spikes, sell and short the oil. All right? Natural gas is a little bit more of a different dynamic. We're in the cold season. It's been pretty cold this year. Natural gas is trading at 3.9 right now. They're at roughly, I think it's around 3.9. It should go back up to about 4.3, 4.4, and you can get some profit out of that. But the thing is pay attention to me. You'll make some money. All right? So I'm telling you how to slow down the aging process, but also how to navigate through these news cycles. So please help support the work that I do by sharing the links, asking your social media to follow me, and get the great products that I offer. And pay attention, because if you do, you're going to be way healthier, especially in your geriatric years. You're going to spend less money in your healthcare over time, and you're going to be able to navigate through these tumultuous times. All right. And then you add in, if the United States hits Iran, so there's going to be a spike in oil. Now, it's not just, see, part of the reason why oil is below the $60 amount, it's trading at about $50, $57, $58 a barrel. OPEC Plus produced a lot of oil over 2025. right? So there's an oversupply. So there's a lot of ships floating around waiting for people to buy the oil so it can be processed. There's an oversupply. But I also believe that Trump and MDS have an agreement to keep the supply up, to drive the price down, to reduce the amount of money flowing in to Putin's coffers to finance the war. All right? So this is a means to try to put pressure on Putin. But it can't last for too long because Saudi Arabia needs the Brent oil to go up in the $70 to $80 range. And the oil producers in the United States needs it at about 60 on average. They can survive at 55 for a little while, but they really need 60 or above. Saudi Arabia needs in the 70 handle or 80 handle, not because of energy production costs, but because its country runs on the profits of oil. The country needs that amount or it's in debt. So they'll be issuing debt. Now they have been issuing debt because the oil has been lower, but it can't be sustainable that way. Oil is going to have to go up. So it's a safe bet that oil is actually going to go up in 2026. Iran war, Venezuelan war, potentially a war with Taiwan. And the producers are going to put pressure on the system by just reducing production. And eventually the oil is going to start, the price of oil in the futures market will start to go up. And you'll start to have contango instead of backwardation. So 2026 should be a higher energy price. Now, it may be higher in, let's say, July and then come back down, and it may be flatlined year over year. Maybe there might be a cycle, but there's going to be a movement where you're at the 50 handle and you're going to go into the 60 handle.
Whether or not some kind of deal that doesn't sort of reward Russia is possible. So where is Putin's head heading into 2026, and where is Zelensky's?
Well, I don't think the
I turned a career plateau into progress with the CMA. CMA Confidence Certified.
Well, I don't think the free press existed when this war began. It certainly didn't exist when Russia made its first move against Ukraine back in 2014. But if you were following my writing in other locations, I was saying that it was highly unlikely that Ukraine could win a war against Russia. And those who euphorically predicted a Ukrainian victory, I think, were ignoring history and ignoring the economic imbalance between these two competing states. So I was never an optimist about how this would turn out. I am emotionally engaged on the side of Ukraine. I've been to Ukraine every year, I think, since 2011. And I was there most recently in September. I can tell you better where President Zelensky's head is. I can guess was Putin's is. Of course, you can base your guess on an extremely long press conference that Putin has just held, during which, I can't say I watched it all, he made it pretty clear that he was not about to accept a compromise peace of the sort that has been on the table now for some weeks, that would leave Ukraine intact as a sovereign state with a substantial army and a US and European security guarantee. Putin's goal has been from the outset to break Ukraine as an independent sovereign state, not to allow it to continue in that capacity. It's not just about territory for him. It doesn't seem to me to matter how many square miles of the Donbass region he gets to keep. The problem for Putin is that if he gets the Donbass but Ukraine is still viable, then he hasn't achieved his war aim. And so we can, I think, confidently predict that he doesn't accept a compromised peace deal and prepares to carry on fighting the war. For President Zelensky, things are more complicated because, well, he's running a democracy apart from anything else. And although the opinion polls are quite good for Zelensky, it's not like he's lost popular support despite a welter of corruption scandals that have embarrassed his government in the past year. The problem is just that this war is taking a terrible toll on Ukraine's people. The army is very thinly spread along a long front line. The army is an elderly army by historic standards. Last time I checked, the average age was 43, and they are struggling to recruit young men into that army. That is a very big problem in a war of attrition along front line, when the Russians seem able to find warm bodies that can walk towards gunfire or at least drone fire in the regions east of the Urals, where economic opportunities are fairly limited. So Zelensky is dealing with a fatigued population, and he knows that he needs a ceasefire. The problem is that if he buys a ceasefire at too high a price, he's going to be politically vulnerable to challenges. So his path is a much rockier one than Putin's, particularly because he has to get not only Trump, the United States, on side, but also the Europeans, who are currently providing more financial support than the United States. And since the US and the Europeans can't really agree on what an adequate or satisfactory peace would look like, it makes the diplomacy of negotiating peace extremely difficult for the Ukrainians. Putin doesn't have that problem because the people backing him are Xi Jinping plus the Iranians and the North Koreans. But Xi Jinping is a lot easier to deal with than all the different leaders that Zelensky has to spend his time mollifying.
So Neil, this is this is a prediction show. So let's, if you had to distill all of that analysis down into a prediction about whether there will be an end to the war, some kind of ceasefire, some kind of deal in 2026, what would you say?
No.
My base case is that the war keeps going.
No.
But there's a rising probability, maybe it's 30%, that some kind of compromise peace gets hammered out because Ukraine needs it. And there are pressure points that can be used to move Putin if we choose to apply pressure. So I think there's a non-zero, but it's not.
And so when you're taking a look at cheap oil at the Brent market and at the WTI market, it can't last. The supply is going to be burned off because the producers are going to slow down production. And then it's going to start to tick up, and then Putin is going to end up having more money for his war effort. So it's short-lived. What Trump is doing with MDS, with flooding the market with oil, is short-lived because there's a negative feedback loop.
Probability of at least a ceasefire in 2026. But the base case is, I'm afraid the war keeps going.
And just on that, one more question, which is, what should the Trump administration be doing? That it badly wants peace. What should it be doing if it wants to deliver that in 2026 that it's not currently doing?
It needs to put pressure on Putin.
Well, there are two things that really can hurt
military
Russia.
pressure.
One is that you make secondary sanctions on Russia's oil exports real, so that they cease to have a market because it's too expensive for Indian or Chinese businesses to buy Russian oil. We've threatened that, but we haven't really enforced it. And the second thing is just to tell the Ukrainians, just keep hitting those targets deep inside Russia. Here, have some more missiles to do it. And we could also do that. We nearly gave them the Tomahawk missiles, and then Trump changed his mind. The reason, by the way, that we aren't doing more is not that President Trump has a bromance with Putin or that the Russians have compromised on him. It's that strategically, the Trump team thinks that it's in a world of great powers, one of which is the US, one of which is China, one of which is Russia, and maybe there are a couple of others. And in that world, you can't permanently antagonize both Russia and China. Ideally, you want one of them to come closer to you. So on the basis of realpolitik, or as we've sometimes called it, Barry, real estate policy, the Trump people don't really want to lean that hard on Putin. They're hoping that they can get Zelensky to make the concessions because, well, he's just Ukraine. He's not a great power. That's how they think about these things. The trouble about that approach is you don't get the peace because Putin has no incentive to settle. Putin can just play to win. He can just grind out this victory, even if the casualties on the Russian side go to 1 million, because he's Putin. He's got the bodies and he's got the power. He doesn't have the accountability to his own people. And he's got the Chinese supplying them with the hardware. That's why my base case is that the war keeps going. I think the Ukrainians can hold out, but it's getting harder and harder for them. And that's why I'm urging them and the US and the Europeans, take a compromised peace, even if it means losing some of the territory in Donbass you currently control, because you need a ceasefire, and with security guarantees, you have a future.
So we've covered the Middle East. We're on a rapid whistle stop.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Little Wint. All right, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the multivitamin. The multivitamin has the multivitamins that you need for proper enzymatic activity. So your cells will perform better and your tissues will perform better. This is a multivitamin that will easily digest. You won't have discomfort in your digestion. This is a very high quality multivitamin. All right. I say everything I sell is very high quality because I take it every day. Now, probiotics, you should take them with the multivitamin. The probiotics, you can get it in a powdered form or the veggie cap form on my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Now, with the probiotic, you're going to improve your gut biome. You're going to bring down inflammation. You're going to absorb your nutrients better. You're going to improve your immune system at the gut level, improve your metabolism. And also, you're going to improve your brain function. You'll be able to sleep better. And when you sleep better, you're going to be able to consolidate memory, bring down cortisol levels, detoxify your central nervous system, and you'll be well rested. And when you do that regularly, you sleep good sleep and have those 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep, you're actually going to slow down the aging process. So good health starts at the gut. Go to my store, get the probiotics, and also take the multivitamin. Again, it's easy to digest. Now, we're in the cold season. A lot of people are getting things. If you've noticed, I've warned people going all the way back to July. Get the drops, structural nano silver drops. You can get it in honey and lemon, cherry flavor, and blueberry. Get a few bags for your household. Have some at work and at home. Take them the moment you have that throat irritation. And what that will do is neutralize and help boost up that immune system. Now, if someone around you is not feeling well, take these prophylactically to be able to create the secretions and to protect the epithelial cells in your oral pharynx. Super important. These are very powerful, very high quality. Please go to my store, get the structural nano silver drops. And get the deodorants. They're dual purpose. You can get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, and citrus. They're for males or females. Has no aluminum, no baking soda. It's made with all natural ingredients. Made from essential oils from the Himalayas. You use this as a daily deodorant, and guess what? It will also help to detoxify your body. So when you're detoxifying your body, your immune system and your endocrine system will perform better. This is the best deodorant that you can buy. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the deodorants, and help with your immune system and endocrine system. All right, let's continue.
Around the world, we've gone to Eastern Europe. Now let's go to what you and everyone I trust really considers our most formidable adversary, and the force, frankly, behind a lot of what's going on in those other places, which of course is China. Trump on April 2nd declared Liberation Day and announced these reciprocal tariffs on all countries not already subject to sanctions. Some of these tariffs, of course, reached as high as 125%. I remember being in a very cold hotel room and live streaming with you about this topic. And then, of course, what happened is that, people, especially libertarian economists, were freaking out. But Trump then began to walk some of it back and carving out exceptions. And this is how we began to earn that infamous nickname of Taco, Trump always chickens out. So first, I want to ask, did the tariffs work? And second is, give us the broad picture. How would you rate Trump's handling so far in this second term of our most formidable adversary in the world?
Well, on tariffs,
instead of doing this, you could be doing this. I got this from the TikTok shop. Technically, it's a mattress vacuum, but it works insanely well on couches too. And believe it or not, this is what came out after just 4 passes. I was literally shook.
Well, on tariffs working, it depends what you mean by works. It's supposed to do multiple things, not all of which they can simultaneously do. If something works as a source of revenue, it's brought in quite a hefty amount of money to the US Treasury, not enough to solve the huge deficit that it's running, but still, it's brought in some cash. It hasn't caused industrialization in the United States to resume on a vast scale because it would take a lot more than protected or protectionist tariffs to do that. There are lots of reasons why it's hard to do manufacturing in the United States, labor costs, permitting, etc. But the real point of these tariffs, I think, was to try to redress the imbalances in the global trading system.
There's something in the United States which is called heavy manufacturing and light manufacturing. In terms of light manufacturing, you open up a business and there's not much regulation. In heavy manufacturing, there is. So regulatory hurdles, definitely in heavy manufacturing. In light manufacturing, which is most of the economy, not so much.
Which I think were real. I don't think it was delusion on the part of Donald Trump to say that the trading system, the so-called liberal international order, benefited others more than the United States. The question is whether the reciprocal tariffs were the right way to go about fixing that. To some extent, I think it has worked in the sense that those countries that really did have very asymmetrical trading relationships with the US, say India or Brazil, which clearly charged very high duties and non-tariff barriers on US goods and paid almost nothing on the other end exporting to the US, have had to renegotiate. And the renegotiation, especially with the Asian economies as well as with the Europeans, is real and it's ongoing, and I don't think it's trivial. But China is the main event, as you implied, Barry. And when you look at the trade war with China that Trump launched very early on in 2025, before reciprocal tariffs, before Liberation Day, the result of that trade war has to have been a win for Xi Jinping. Unlike everybody else, China retaliated commensurately in a kind of tit-for-tat, game theoretical way. They planned for this. They had a strategy. Everything Trump did, they matched it. And then they played their ace, which was export controls on rare earth elements. That's all those weird and wonderful things on the periodic table that you never learned in chemistry, which turn out to be kind of important for a whole bunch of 21st century industrial activities. And that was the trump card, which forced the United States to scale back its tariffs on China and enter into negotiations, which are still going on, about the tariffs that the US and China are going to levy on one another. So I think you have to say that as an instrument in Cold War II of applying pressure to Xi Jinping, this did not work well. In fact, it revealed the power that China now exerts not only over the US, but over the whole world, because it has a monopoly on the mining and refining of these rare earth elements. And you can't build a modern car without those.
Neil, the place, of course, where this Cold War people worry might become a hot war is Taiwan. And we ask you about it now because the clock is ticking, and Xi Jinping has set himself and his the Chinese army a deadline of being ready to achieve reunification, meaning in non-propagandistic terms, the invasion of Taiwan by 2027, which means it has to happen this year, or it might happen this year. So again, I'm going to pin you down with a cold hard prediction question, which is, will China invade Taiwan in 2026?
No, it won't. And I don't think
it depends. It depends on if economically we are weak and can't respond for some reason, maybe some sort of recession or whatever. Also, the political instability in China is part of the calculus. President Xi may make his move to try to consolidate power if he feels threatened internally within the one-party system. Also, is there some miscalculation by the defense force of the United States, Taiwan, or even Japan? Maybe even the Philippines. Something that is just bullet out of the blue sky type stuff. A black swan event. Now, this coincides with this idea that the curse starts September 11th, 2026 at sundown and lasts all the way through the first or second week of October of 2027. So things could be emerging and you don't go kinetic until 2027. But there's these rumblings or these tremors in 2026. So there's a high probability that there's going to be some sort of bad event that it takes place in the world where everyone's going to be affected. And I suspect that it's a combination of war and economics. Now, I'm not sure which one happens first. If it's the war first and then the economics starts to take hold, or if it's the economics that takes hold and then war. I don't know. But both of them seem to be on the table.
Build a website you love with Wix. For your words, create your brand, your opportunity.
No, it won't. And I don't think it'll invade Taiwan in 2027 either, because I don't think China's military is ready to carry on what would be an enormously challenging military operation. I'm not even sure they're going to blockade Taiwan, which is another option where they just surround the island and control access to it for people and trade. I think what we'll see in 2026 is ongoing political pressure and military pressure to try to shift the Taiwanese towards a kind of acceptance that where Hong Kong now is where they're going, where they'll have some nominal separate system, but they'll in effect be under the control of Beijing. It's going to be all about diplomacy in 2026, not about warfare, because President Trump thinks he's going to have multiple meetings with Xi Jinping. I've even heard the number 4 bandied around. That would be unprecedented for the US president to meet the Chinese leader 4 times. Not even Richard Nixon managed that. I think we can forget 4 meetings, but there'll be at least 2, I guess. And these meetings will be very consequential because there is a whole lot of stuff on the table. It's true that the Chinese have the rare earth elements that they can restrict our access to, but we have something that we can restrict their access to, and that is the most sophisticated semiconductors. Those are the ones designed by NVIDIA, by Jensen Huang's company, and manufactured by TSMC in, you guessed it, Taiwan.
They'll engineer them way around there.
Are going to be about tariffs. They're going to be about trade restrictions, about export controls on rare earth elements. They're going to be about fentanyl. They're going to be about a whole range of things. But the one that will really be the key is Taiwan itself. Yep. The Chinese want the US to change its position on Taiwan, to say right out that we will not support, in fact, we will oppose any move towards Taiwanese independence. I don't think President Trump is going to do that. I don't think any of his advisors will tell him to do it, but that's going to be the ask. So it's going to be a year of summitry, not of invasions or blockades. And these summits could be very consequential because there's so much on the table.
I think that the war most likely would not take place. The invasion of Taiwan won't take place in 2026. But once the gate is opened up for the curse, that increases the probability that it's going to happen at the tail end of 2026 or into 2027. Now, if the PLA is writing white paper saying that, guess what? They want Taiwan by 2027. That falls right in line with this curse issue that I've been saying that was going to happen for a long time here. All right? I haven't just said this. I mean, just go back through some of the old videos. I've been saying this for more than 6 months. There's a curse coming. It's not going to be pretty. And I'll tell you, pay attention to what you remember back in some of these other epochs. All right? What was happening right before 9/11? How did you feel about the economy? All right? Go back in your personal history and think about that. If you're old enough to really think about this, think about what was going on in 2020, in early 2021. All right? And how you felt economically. Think about what was going on, and then obviously 9/11 happens. All right? Think about what was going on in your personal life in 2006 and early 2007, before the crash of Lehman. There's rumblings that take place months, if not a year before. Think about what was going on in your personal life in 2019, before the crisis, the pandemic. There are rumblings that take place because nothing happens in this on our plane. Nothing happens in this universe, on our planet, without God wanting it to happen. Or let me rephrase that. Without God letting it happen. Maybe God doesn't want it to happen, but God lets it happen. Nothing. Not a birth, not a death, not good luck, not bad luck, nothing. So when this happens, it's because God's letting it happen. It's because we did something as a collective wrong. So think about what was happening in 2006, before the crisis of 2007 and 2008. Because that crisis was starting to roll and get more and more and more. It was like an avalanche. Same thing in 2019. And it rolled into 2020, 2021, and 2022. Think about what was happening just before October 7th of 2023. And what was happening in the world. And what was happening in your life. And how you've been affected by the tumultuous times during the Biden administration. Same thing is going to happen here. Think about where your life is right now and how it's going to emerge as that gate opens up on September 11th of 2026. The probability of something really bad coming is very high.
You'd expect in a Cold War, the two presidents get together. You remember summitry was such a thing back in the day. The summit, I mean, I'm old enough to remember summit mania, when you would get all kinds of excitement because Reagan was meeting Gorbachev in Reykjavik. Well, it's going to be like that, only with Trump and Xi.
Okay, let's take one.
Does God exist? Philosophers disagree. But there's no philosophical disagreement about the existence of reason and rationality high school summer program.
They died in.
All right.
Okay,
before we continue on, please go to my store and get the collagen. Collagen is a dual purpose product. It's going to help with your skin, the health of your nails and your hair. help with the health of your joints and your cartilage, your musculature, and your bone density. It's a very high quality product. Take it every day. This is a month's supply. Make sure you do some resistance training to help with the musculature and the bone density. Vitamin D3 also helps with bone density. It helps you to absorb calcium and it helps to deposit it if you're doing the resistance training. Vitamin D3 also helps with cardiovascular health. Vitamin D3 helps during the winter season to get rid of cells that need to go into apoptosis if they're infected. And vitamin D3 is a gene expression cofactor. So vitamin D3 is super important for your overall health, especially in the winter season. Take it every day. Olive leaf extract, dual purpose product. I like providing dual purpose products to my audience. Why? Because you'll be able to target multiple systems and you get more bang for your buck. All right? Olive leaf extract boosts up your immune system and it helps with your cardiovascular system. How? How does that work, Dr. Paul Cottrell? Let me tell you. Brings down inflammation. When you're bringing down inflammation, you're helping your immune system. And by bringing down inflammation at the vascular level, you're reducing plaque formation. And bringing down inflammation at the brain level, you're reducing stress on your neuron. So it's also going to help with protecting the health of the neuron and the myelin sheath. Olive leaf extract also helps to control your lipid profile by helping to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. When you do that, you're reducing plaque formation, so you have better blood flow. When you have better blood flow, guess what? You're healthier. If your cardiovascular system is clean, you're actually getting better blood flow to your tissues, better perfusion, and therefore your organ systems will perform better, including your brain. A lot of people don't realize. If you start having blockage that starts to accumulate, plaque that starts to accumulate, especially at the carotid, guess what? Your blood flow is less to your brain, and there's less nutrients going to the neuron. It's really important to make sure you clean out the vascular system as best as you can. You can't get it to 100%. A lot of people don't realize cardiovascular disease starts at age 15 in the United States. At age 15, cardiovascular disease. It's asymptomatic in most cases. It doesn't start showing up symptomatically until age 30, maybe late 20s, depending on how bad it is in the United States. But it starts in your teens. So it's really important to take supplements that help to reduce plaque formation and slowly bring it down so there's less plaque buildup. It's possible to do, but you have to follow the protocol. So please go to my store, get the olive leaf extract, boost up that immune system, and bring down that inflammation and improve your lipid profile so you're not producing new plaque formation. So please go to my store and get the olive leaf extract. It's super important. Super important.
One that I don't know if we could have predicted a year ago, and that is Venezuela. The US, of course, has been conducting these operations against what it describes as Venezuelan drug trafficking vessels. Washington says that these are completely legitimate. It's aimed at stopping narcotic shipments. Venezuela says that Washington is trying to destabilize the government. Machado just won the Nobel Peace Prize. She's smuggled out of the country. There's a lot of drama around Venezuela and the pretty horrendous evil regime of Maduro. Where does this end in 2026? Does Maduro fall?
Well, if you want to get rid of somebody, if you really want to change the regime, history tells us it's hard to do it from the air. You really do need to be down there on the ground in Caracas if you want to get rid of Maduro and put somebody else better than Maduro into that job. And what I'm not seeing is any evidence that the Trump administration is ready to send in the Marines. Let's go back to the Trump corollary. After the Roosevelt corollary, it was pretty routine for the Marine Corps and other U.S. Military personnel to be deployed to Cuba, to Panama, to Haiti, And so there's a precedent, if you're prepared to go back far enough, for that kind of intervention. And the US continued to do that kind of thing, really right up until the 1950s. You could even say that the overthrow of Noriega was an example. Think of Grenada. You know, the Reagan administration did stuff like this. And then we stopped. Then we kind of got a bit embarrassed about treating Latin America as our backyard. And we still are a little bit embarrassed about it, or at least we're reluctant to deploy the proverbial boots on the ground because, well, you never know what might go wrong. And it never looks good if you send a bunch of our boys somewhere and they start coming back in body bags. So I think Maduro can hang on if the US isn't prepared to send in some ground forces to persuade him to get on the plane and leave. That's not something I say with high confidence because, as you mentioned, Barry, there are a great many moving parts. And you have to admit that it would be kind of anticlimactic for the US to deploy an enormous flotilla, as big as there has been really since the Second World War, in the Caribbean, and then have nothing happen.
Let me get this straight. We are moving our military in position that's reminiscent of something in World War II. But wait a minute, we're in a Cold War. That doesn't jive. We're in a hot war, but it's a slower hot war because of technology, because of the speed of information, because of some of the other spectral aspects of war.
I don't quite work out how they get around this. But I'm confident that if Maduro doesn't want to go, he's not going to go unless there is a military force there that makes him go.
Neil, we've covered the kind.
Without headway, I can't imagine that I would ever be taking insurance.
Neil, we've covered the kind of obvious flashpoints, I guess. You know, China, Venezuela, the Middle East, Ukraine. Often, though, it's the places that we don't predict where, and that's where the drama pops up. You know, who could have predicted in 2023 that at the start of 2023 that Israel-Gaza would be the big thing for the following 2 years. So, first part of my question is, what is not on our radar so far in this conversation that should be on our radar for 2026, in your view? And then secondly, you mentioned earlier the kind of fight on the right in America about all sorts of things, including America's role in the world and US foreign policy. And how does that, do you predict, how is that going to change or impact the administration's approach to all of these things? Is that going to, are we going to see the ripple effects of that fight in US foreign policy?
Well, this is a subject that I've been thinking a lot about since the hideous massacre in Bondi Beach in Australia. And I come away with the following conclusion that there are going to be attacks on Jewish communities all over the world because the pattern is now establishing itself that the Islamists, whether they're Iranian-backed or not, see a whole...
This is part of the curse that I'm talking about. It's not the only part because there's going to be a financial component, but this is part of the curse. And there's going to be, what I've been saying, there's going to be a fight between Esau and Jacob. They're twins. Jacob is going to overcome Esau, but Esau, there's a part of him that will repent. So societies and individuals, but countries, have certain soul roots. And those soul roots either come from Ishmael, Jacob, or Esau. So certain countries have sometimes a pure soul root, Esau, or a pure soul root, Jacob, or a pure soul root, Ishmael, or a combination of them. Maybe more Jacob and a little bit of Esau, or more Esau and a little bit of Jacob. All right, so there's a spectrum of this. And that includes individuals. You can have an individual that is pure Jacob, but in a society that is pure Esau, and vice versa, or a combination. All right, with that said, all of our soul roots are coming from these three. Even countries come from a soul root. Do you think about the ethos of a country? It's the essence of that ethos is the soul root. Okay. There's going to be a great battle between Jacob and Esau. And during this battle, or just before the battle, Esau starts to repent. And the part of Esau's soul root starts to divide into a positive Esau and a negative Esau. The negative Esau is the evil part of Esau. The positive Esau aligns with Ishmael and Jacob. And all three of those, the positive Esau, Jacob, and Ishmael, band together to kill negative Esau. This has been written down for centuries, all right? Over 2,000 years. When this happens, Satan dies. Satan is attached to Esau, but the negative part of Esau. And as the positive part of Esau is starting to repent and pull away, there's rumblings and convulsions in the world. That's what we're seeing. We're seeing this split that's taking place. All right? And this is part of the curse. For this big event to happen, there's a curse that gets people to be polarized, to go into their different soul roots, and then to do what they're supposed to do. This has been written down in the Zohar for close to 2,000 years. So this should not be a surprise.
Of soft targets in the Jewish communities of the Western world, broadly defined. And as that violence continues, and I fear it will, then I think the whole issue of anti-Semitism is going to become a bigger and bigger issue in US politics, because those, and I associate them with Tucker Carlson and others who have supported him, those who want to flirt with the old and odious anti-Semitism of the right will, I think, be roundly condemned, as they were by Ben Shapiro just the other night, by people who understand that anti-Semitism is a truly toxic ideological substance. It's a very problematic issue for the MAGA movement, because there are clearly elements in the MAGA movement in the United States that don't want to expel Tucker Carlson from their midst. So I would say the question.
And this is the problem with the MAGA movement. Part of it has a combination of Jacob and Esau, and different groups within the MAGA movement depends on the composition. Is it more Jacob than Esau in an individual, or more Esau than Jacob in an individual? And Tucker Carlson is more Esau than Jacob. Now the question is, within the Esau component of the soul root, how much of it is negative Esau and how much of it is positive Esau? If you have a lot of Jacob and a little bit of Esau, you probably have more positive Esau than negative Esau. If you are more Esau than Jacob, you probably have more negative Esau than positive Esau. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of the chemistry, the composition of these soul roots. Tucker Carlson is more Esau than Jacob, and probably more negative Esau than positive Esau. So when the split happens, there's going to be more convulsion with him. If you are more Ishmael or more Jacob, you don't feel this convulsion.
Where are we neglecting is the location of the next major attack on a Jewish community. And since attacks happen in 2025 everywhere from England to Australia, it's really anybody's guess where the next attack occurs. I'm sad to say this, But I think we have to stare in the face the reality that anti-Semitism is on the rise. Violent attacks, pogroms are on the rise around the world.
This is the separation of Esau, positive and negative Esau.
In November. And he made the point that if you think about anti-Semitism mainly in terms of the Holocaust, which I suppose we've been educated to do, you forget that prior to the Holocaust, pogroms, outbreaks of violence against Jewish communities were a regular feature of life in 19th century Europe, and not only in Europe. So it's the return of the pogrom, which begins to feel...
So we got the 19th century, in the 20th century, half of the 20th century. Doesn't this sound like that we're in the throes of World War? There's a lot of similarities. Moving military around the world. Large armadas. That sounds like World War. The pogroms of the 1930s, 1920s. That sounds like moving towards World War, not a Cold War. So I think that there are more data points that suggest that we're in a hot war already. Something big is coming. Like bigger than Lehman, bigger than COVID.
One of the trends of the 2020s, perhaps the most odious trend of the 2020s. I suspect that we're going to have to deal with more of that in 2026, alas.
Put on your historian's hat for a moment.
Instead of doing this, you could be doing this. I got this from the TikTok shop. Technically, it's a mattress vacuum, but it works insanely well on couches too. And believe it or not, this is what came out after just 4 passes. I was literally shook. It uses ultrasonic pulses, 33,000 taps per minute to shake dust mites out from deep inside your mattress, and it detects mites. The light turns red. You hold it there for a few seconds, and once it's clean, it turns blue. It also uses UV light and hot air to kill 99.9% of bacteria, dust, and allergens.
Put on your historian's hat for a moment. How does that play out? In other words, has there ever been sort of a rising surge of anti-Semitic frenzied violence that doesn't end with some kind of broader catastrophe? Or is it possible to somehow like put the genie back in the bottle?
It's possible,
How
but
does
low
it play
probability.
out more specifically?
Yeah, it's going to be war. It's going to be war.
I'm just asking for a friend. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're asking for a lot of friends of mine too. I think the lesson of the late 19th century is that when violence against Jews occurred in the Russian Empire, what was called the Pale of Settlement in Eastern Europe, where Jewish communities under Russian rule lived, the United States played a key role in condemning the Tsarist government and indeed restricting its access to the New York capital market. It was a remarkable time when a financial figure like Jacob Schiff could have that kind of influence. The Rothschilds in London also played a part in condemning the way that Jews were being treated. And Jewish communities found that they were supported by non-Jewish liberals, as well as many conservatives on that issue. So there is a playbook for condemning anti-Semitism and penalizing those who engage in it. And we need to blow the dust off that playbook and remind Britons, Americans, perhaps throughout the English-speaking world and beyond, that the lesson of the 20th century is if you do not check anti-Semitism, if you don't condemn it, if you don't drive it out of the pale of political respectability, then like some ghastly cancer, it will spread until it poses a truly mortal threat. That is the way to think about the Holocaust. The Holocaust, I argued this in a book called War of the World, published back in 2006, nearly 20 years ago, was a consequence of a sustained spread of an ideology that identified Jews as racial aliens and then laid the foundation for their annihilation. It didn't begin in 1933. these ideologies had roots in the mid-19th century. And one of the points I keep making when I try to explain what's going on to people is the ideology is not new. Nobody's come up with anything new in the 21st century. Ideologically, we're back to 19th century brands. Hey, try anti-Semitism. Or how about socialism? How does that grab you? So these ideologies they've been around for a long, long time. But when people try to deploy them again in the context of our time, with all the powerful algorithms that exist to disseminate these toxic ideologies, when a Nick Fuentes can be turned into a kind of star, essentially by algorithmic manipulation, then the potential seems even more lethal. So we have to act now. We have to act now because if we don't, it will ultimately lead down a path to something like Auschwitz. And this is, I think, a moral imperative for all.
I don't think it's going to be like an Auschwitz thing. It's going to be world conflict, probably tactical nuke detonation. It's not going to be Auschwitz. It's going to be World War. It's not going to be.
Or who care about
it's going to be massive killing.
Democracy, but also the rule of law and basic human decency. If you think it's okay to say Hitler was cool for the lulz, then you're evil and you're part of what ultimately is that's a political cancer.
He didn't say it, but that's a hit against Nick Fuentes. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Better start boning up with getting some muscle because we're going to war. You know, if you have a kid that's in your home, you know, you need to start raising them, especially if they're male, start raising them in the sense that you're going to fight for the country and you're going to start, you're going to, you know, get your act in discipline in order and fight for the country. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Gladiator Barley. This is going to help to build up muscle. It's going to bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals, and detoxify your body. You take this every day, you're going to get healthy. It's going to boost up your immune system. It's going to help with your endocrine system. It's going to help with brain function because you keep the inflammation down and you soak up those free radicals. You're keeping your neurons healthy. By bringing down inflammation, detoxifying, and soaking up free radicals, you're reducing the plaque formation because you have to have, for plaque formation to happen in your vascular system, inflammation and free radicals. Well, if you take the inflammation away, if you take away the free radicals, you don't have oxidized LDL and plaque formation. So your cardiovascular system will improve. And by detoxifying your body, you're helping your immune system, your endocrine system. And with Gladiator Barley, it helps to build muscle. Don't be one of these boomers from the boomer generation that ran away from their responsibility in fighting in a war. Because there were an awful lot of people that were baby boomers out there that dodged the draft. Now, my father didn't. My father served. But did yours? Did yours? If you're younger, you know, did your father serve? Or did he dodge the draft? Did they go to did they go to Canada? Did they dodge the draft? Did they hide themselves in academia? Start producing kids, training kids to have discipline, and you fight for the fucking country. Now, Myotrol. Myotrol will help build up muscle, especially if you're age 40 or older. This will help with the gene expression to build muscle. This has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with the gene expression to build muscle. You do some resistance training, you're going to build up muscle and maintain that muscle. People that get older, they start atrophying. So you have to take supplements and start doing resistance training to help maintain and build that muscle. Make sure you do back exercises to improve your back posture so you have better lymphatic flow to improve your immune system, better venous return flow to your heart to help with your cardiovascular system. When you have better musculature for your spine and you're doing those resistance training, what will happen is that your spine will be aligned and your vertebrae density will improve. That's super important because when you get older and you start to atrophy, unfortunately, you start getting osteopenia and osteoporosis. You need to do resistance training. So take the Myotrol, build the muscle. If you're an athlete, you'll benefit from this. Younger or older, by taking Myotrol, you'll gain strength in your sport. To get the max benefits, stack them together. Please go to my store, get the Gladiator Barley and the Miatrol. But I'm all kidding aside. It's really important that we tell our youth that if you go to war, you're going to enlist. You're going to enlist and you're going to fight for the country and not run away. Because I'm telling you, because that Gen Z, the Gen Z generation, a lot of them are going to run. A lot of them are not going to fight for the country.
Neil Ferguson, maybe not the happiest note, but I can't think of a more powerful one to end on. Thanks for coming on the show. And more than that, thanks for being with us at the Free Press. We can't wait to see what you are going to write about and talk about in 2026. Merry Christmas.
Thanks, Barry. Thanks, Ollie. Merry Christmas to everybody. I wasn't very merry there, but hey.
War's coming. Better tell your kid to start boning up. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin B complex. If you're 40 years of age or older, this will help with your cellular metabolism. The vitamin B1 to B4 will help with your mitochondrial health. The first 4 B vitamins are involved in the electron transport chain, so it'll boost up your ATP levels. You'll have more energy. When you have more energy, your cells will perform better. Vitamin B complex will rev up your cellular metabolism. So you'll have more energy, you'll lose weight, and vitamin B complex helps to protect your neurons. When you get older, that's really important because it has vitamin B12. Now, Goodnight Formula also helps with your brain function. Getting a good night's sleep is going to help to detoxify your central nervous system, consolidate your memory, and to be well rested. Why? Because Goodnight Formula has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower that will help you to get into 3 to 5 cycles of deep sleep and REM sleep, which is essential to detoxifying the central nervous system and consolidating memory. Take this every night. And when you have better sleep, you will age slower. It's that simple. So please go to my store, get the Goodnight Formula, and get the vitamin B complex. And if you have kids, you better start telling them, if we go to war, you're going to fight for the country. You don't have a choice. Because there'll be a time where individuals that didn't fight in the big war that's coming, you will be looked down upon as a traitor and as a coward.
$1 million worth of shares. And we know that just last week, stocks rallied because Apple CEO Tim Cook also bought $3 million worth of shares. This move really doubled his personal stake and signaled confidence in a turnaround strategy led by Hill. And Nike has just been struggling throughout the year, but maybe this could be the turnaround for them. But they've seen weaker quarterly margins, sluggish sales in China, and even for Converse.
Yeah, I know. We were just talking about that earlier. I mean, the stock down more than 15% year to date. So Elliot Hill obviously thinks he's getting a bargain. You're also looking at some biotechs and one, ticker CORT. It's not cordyceps like The Last of Us, but it's what?
Corcept. So Corcept Therapeutics stock is down by almost 50%. That's after regulators rejected the company's drug to treat a form of high blood pressure. So we know that with biotech companies, whenever there's a treatment and there's a rejection, the stock really plunges. So this is the lowest since at least 2024. I was bracing myself for something more drastic, but at least when I go to SINS, SINS function Bloomberg terminal, it's just till 2024. So it's the drug that aims to treat patients with hypertension and too much of those hormone cortisol. So stock is now down. Ticker CORT.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting as we watch all these healthcare companies, all of these biotechs, they make a lot of wild moves. But another stock that tends to be pretty volatile is ticker DJT, which I know you're looking at.
Of course, ticker DJT, it's Trump Media's company. They again announced plans to distribute a new digital token to shareholders in partnership with Crypto.com.
Another digital
token. And if you're counting.
All these tokens.
And for every token, they will get one whole DJT share. So there is some exchange, and they will release more details next year. They said token holders may receive periodic rewards, but this is a company that posted an operating loss of $186 million and just generated $3.7 million in revenue over the last 12 months. And as Matt Winkler, our EIC Emeritus, pointed out in an opinion column, Strum Media is the only company among its 20 domestic peers with no widely disseminated 12-month target share price, revenue estimates, or earnings forecast. So it's either they're new and maybe analysts don't want to touch them just yet, or maybe they
I
just.
don't understand this. What is it? Buy one, get one free, buy a share, get
I would take any free thing. Why not? Would you? Yeah,
I mean,
maybe. I don't know.
Cost you anything, I guess it's not going to cost you anything when if it goes down. Talk to us about the broader market, because we are pausing in our Santa rally, but we still have a couple of days. We could make it up.
We still have a couple of, or maybe couple of days until I think 2 days after January, and it's looking good because the S&P is up 17% this year. We're entering our 4th year of the bull market, and I think if there's a thing to note this year, it's that the AI rally has broadened. Remember, in the past years, it's just Nvidia, but Nvidia is now just the 71st ranking in the S&P 500. The very first are data companies that really benefit from this whole AI rally. I mean, there are companies not a lot of people have heard of. SanDisk, it's up 600%.
Oh, we used to use SanDisk all the time back in the day. I'm sure you've seen it.
I use SanDisk actually, and I was making a point to Matt Miller earlier when he made me realize this fact that the new laptops, you don't have the plug-in anymore. But I remember when I first got my iMac, you can put it there. So I would excitedly take photos in my Digicam. And then I would plug it in and upload it on Multiply or Friendster.
I think you just looked those up. I don't believe that.
She was typing away.
Ellie, thank you so much. Stay with us. We'll preview one of the biggest IPOs for 2026, assuming it happens. SpaceX is going public. That's next, and this is Bloomberg.
If you want to bring down your cortisols to reduce hypertension, guess what? Take ashwagandha root. Go to my store. Get the ashwagandha root. You don't need to be on big pharma and pharmacopoeia. It's so simple. In addition, when you bring down inflammation, you're bringing down cortisol levels too. This is the reason why I keep on saying take lignans, ashwagandha root, and the turmeric. All right, let's talk about that. Turmeric. It's an antioxidant, so it's going to soak up free radicals and bring down pro-inflammatory cytokines, so your inflammation will go down. Lignans will help with your immune system, your endocrine system, soak up free radicals and bring down inflammation. It's going to help bring down those cortisol levels. And stack it with the ashwagandha root, and the ashwagandha root that I have on my store will control those cortisol levels and your blood glucose levels. And when you stack these together, the turmeric, the lignans, and the ashwagandha, they're synergistic, and it will help to reduce plaque formation. So your cardiovascular system will improve, your immune system will improve, your brain function will improve because you have better blood flow and you're bringing down stress on your neuron. And by bringing down those cortisol levels, you're slowing down the damage that high cortisol levels do. See, a lot of people don't realize if you're stressed and you have high cortisol levels, you're damaging organ systems. Your tissues are damaged. Your immune system goes down. Your blood pressure goes up. When you bring it down, your blood pressure goes down. Your vascular system improves. Your immune system improves. Your stress reduces, and the tissues can heal. This is the reason why if you bring down stress by exercising, being in mindfulness or spirituality, taking the proper supplementation like the turmeric, the lignans, and the ashwagandha, you're actually slowing down the aging process. You don't need these drugs from big pharma. If you just follow my lead, you will slow down the aging process, have better cardiovascular health, better immune system, better brain function. It's really simple. About 65% of your workout should be resistance training, 35% cardio. Make sure you stretch and do balancing exercises regularly, proper supplementation, proper diet, right? Don't overeat. Make sure you drink filtered water. Stay away from processed foods. Reduce your sugar intake. Mindfulness, learn new things. Have some spirituality. When you do these things regularly, guess what? You slow down the aging process. I'm older than Alex Jones. I'm a lot smarter than Alex Jones too. Look at him. Look at him. He looks a lot older than I am. But he's younger. He's younger. He's younger. Why? Because he has a high stress life. He doesn't work out properly, and he doesn't eat properly, and he doesn't take the damn supplements that he sells. If you follow my lead, go to my store, take the same supplements I'm taking every day, you will get healthy. But you have to take the initiative. Now we're approaching a new year, 2026. It's a perfect time to look in the mirror, say you're going to get healthy. I'm telling you how. Please go to my store, get the lignans, the turmeric, the ashwagandha, all these other supplements that I've been talking about, and get healthy. Because when you do that, you'll have more longevity, you'll have more vitality, and you'll have lower healthcare costs in your geriatric years. Because if you're unhealthy now, don't you think you'll get more unhealthy when you're older? All right.
Bloomberg Tech host Ed Ludlow sat down with Jared Isaacman, NASA administrator, where they discussed President Trump's support of the agency and NASA's relevancy. Here's a piece of their conversation.
Goes beyond just a recommitment to the Artemis program. This is the next big leap. You know, we're not just going back to the moon under the space policy. We're declaring we're going back and we're going to establish the infrastructure. I mean, what space-loving fan out there doesn't want to see a lunar base? And then we're going to invest in the technology that's going to enable, you know, frequent long-duration missions to Mars and beyond, whether that be through nuclear propulsion or nuclear surface power, which obviously has a number of useful applications, be it the moon or Mars. So it's an exciting day. It's absolutely extraordinary national space policy. And one that I'm not surprised to see, frankly. It was under President Trump's first term that we returned American spaceflight capability to the United States after a 10-year hiatus. It's when he kicked off the Artemis program. And now, you know, we're taking it to the next level.
Administrator Isaacman, Jared, the question I get most for you right now in response to everything that's happened in the last few weeks is, how is NASA still relevant, right? In a world where the private sector is dominating activity, it's dominating innovation. What is your answer to that question?
Well, Ed, that seems to be a common misconception. I mean, you go back to the 1960s, and NASA didn't go at it alone. I mean, we had McDonnell Douglas, we had Boeing, we had Northrop. These were all critical vendors and contractors that helped us achieve the near impossible of sending American astronauts to the moon and bringing them back safely to Earth. I mean, some of these companies still exist and play a huge part in the Artemis program. And then, of course, there are some new companies, you know, like SpaceX, who's given us rapid reusability of their vehicles, and Blue Origin and Stoke. But it's the same thing. NASA is leading the ultimate high ground of space. And let's focus a little bit more on science, too, in that. I mean, as much as I would love to see private companies and academic institutions building, you know, Hubble telescopes and James Webb Space Telescope and putting rovers on the moon, that is squarely in the responsibility of NASA.
And that was NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman there with our own Ed Ludlow. Fantastic conversation. And Ed joins us now, co-host of Bloomberg Tech, among some of his hats here at Bloomberg. It was a great conversation. NASA had 180 days starting just a few days ago to prepare a plan for this responsive national security space architecture. Ed, will they get there? I mean, will they have this plan in a couple of months?
Yeah, I mean, Administrator Isaacman's path to the White House wasn't straightforward, right? He was nominated earlier in the year, then the president pulled it, and then the president had a change of heart, and eventually he was confirmed. But the reason that the private sector in particular backs him he's highly competent. You know, he's a successful entrepreneur. He is himself an astronaut. He's ambitious and wants to get things done. The main tension in the interview you just played is that the priority of this administration and therefore NASA in this country is principally first the moon. Right now, the leading commercial player in space is SpaceX. And as you guys know, Elon Musk, who leads SpaceX, has much broader goals to get humankind to Mars. And it was always going to be, where did Mr. Isaacman focus first? And now he has a lot of support, bipartisan support across the aisle, and a strong staff, competent staff of people at NASA that think he'll get it done. Whether he does, we'll have to see from him.
Yeah. I mean, how important is Trump's support of NASA in terms of the US being a leader in space exploration and innovation?
Yeah, I mean, this was why I posed that question about the relevance of NASA, right? At the end of the day, NASA has a budget and it delegates contracts to various private sector names. How can it be anything more than that? The president, you know, in choosing someone like Jared Isaacman, he's of a different character mold, skill set to prior NASA administrators. He's not a political animal, really, based on his career. People see that as the president having strong support for America's leadership in space from a national security standpoint. And there is a great fixation with the moon, right? The great tagline that Isaacman has at the moment is, we're going to build a base on the moon, an American base on the moon, and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, we all know that contracts have been awarded to SpaceX and Blue Origin, Ed, but what other companies are out there that would be bidding for these kinds of contracts or smaller contracts from NASA?
Yeah, I think that the main thing to completely reiterate is that the reason that the contracts get awarded, such as they do, is on competitive grounds anyway. And when the later part of that interview that just played, I made the point that when Transport Secretary Duffy was in an interim basis leading NASA, he almost opened up the field again. Existing contracts said, let's get some of these smaller players involved. Isaacman's response to that, and to answer your question, was all of the parties, SpaceX, Blue Origin, and any other smaller players that might come along, go into it knowing that only those that can deliver will win the contract. The main thing is right now, SpaceX completely dominates payload to orbit. Of course, you have the United Launch Alliance, which is a historic JV between Boeing and Northrop. Boeing has had many well-documented problems. In the startup space, Rocket Lab is also being name-checked by Isaacman, and they, at much smaller scale to SpaceX, but are continuing to ramp their launch cadence, becoming an option for America in strategic payload to orbit.
Well, you talked about SpaceX's potential IPO. How do you even value a company like SpaceX, especially if you think about, given its mix of commercial launches, Starlink, also government contracts?
Here's what I know. SpaceX is well underway with plans for an IPO, maybe June of 2026. They just closed their latest tender or secondary, where employees are allowed to sell shares to investors. The company doesn't raise any money, but you have to set a share price. That price was set at $421 a share. Valuation on that private transaction, $800 billion. My understanding is they want to raise $30 to $40 billion. You can do the math on how much of the company they would prepare to offer in an IPO, and the valuation is somewhere between $1 and $1.5 trillion. And it's this idea that in the future, there's a cap on revenue, at least, that you can get from launching stuff into space. Elon Musk always used to say that it was about $3 billion per annum, but actually SpaceX managed to move beyond that. So that valuation, how do you value it? It's on Starlink, space-based internet, and the whole rationale behind this IPO. The whole point of raising all that money, SpaceX sees a market for data centers in space. They need the capital to buy the GPUs. Where they're at on the design of a space-based data center, who knows? But that's the reporting we've got.
Mm-hmm. That's Bloomberg's Ed Ludlow. Thank you so much for joining us. Love your insights always. Continuing this conversation, we've got Ezinne Uzo-Okoro. She's senior fellow at Harvard Belfer Center, and of course, former assistant director for space policy in the Biden White House. Ezinne, let's continue this conversation specifically about SpaceX and this potential upcoming IPO. How do you even value a company like SpaceX, given the massive mix that it really has here that we've been talking about with Ed?
It's everything we've seen from SpaceX has been incredible over the last 2 decades, and this will be an incredible feat. It is quite a task to measure a company that's very useful to the commercial space sector, that's useful to broadband communications today in the form of Starlink, and that is critical to the U.S. National Security Enterprise through Starlink again and through their launch services, and again critical to U.S. Civilian space activities through launch capabilities. So, and this has nothing to do with, we've got to mention, their activities globally. So it is a large company with a lot of resources and a lot of opportunities, and they are looking to continue to grow, as Ed mentioned, into data centers in space. And here we are with what is likely to be the largest IPO ever next year.
Yeah, I mean, this idea of data centers in space, how much does it concern you, Esme, given that you were also at one point responsible for space sustainability and looking after space debris and so on, and putting processes in place that would minimize all of that?
One thing that's not well known is it's been studied by numerous global groups and global communities in space worldwide. And SpaceX was very cooperative in ensuring that their satellites did not block the night sky, did not prevent astronomical research, astronomy research. And when they did, they took steps to fix it immediately. So SpaceX's satellites are usually below 700 kilometers in low Earth orbit. They have black paint and a number of strategies that they use to ensure that they are sustainable. They are satellites that degrade at the 25-year requirement that we have for space debris, and they are in compliance with all our regulations on space sustainability. So if anyone could lead in this area, SpaceX is the one to do so, because they have been a formidable leader.
Actually, what does this mean for the economy of space more broadly? Is this a situation where rising tide lifts all boats? What does this mean for peers?
Absolutely. We're going to see, quite like we saw with AI funding in recent years or recent months, we are going to see all space startup, space sector companies benefit from fresh eyes and fresh interest from investors who perhaps stepped back a few years ago after some of the disappointing specs that we had in perhaps 2018. I think you're going to see some fresh eyes and some openness to invest in a plethora of space companies today based on this soon-to-be successful IPO.
We are going to talk more about this with you in just a few moments, Esme. Thank you so much for joining us. It's such a fascinating conversation, and obviously a huge priority for the administration as well.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. This has 68 nutrients. It is a very comprehensive compound profile shown on the screen here. This will target multiple systems. This is going to help with your brain function, help with your cardiovascular system, help with your musculature, bring up your energy levels, rev up your metabolism. You're going to be able to lose weight. You're going to improve your immune system and your endocrine system, bringing down inflammation. You're going to have a steady burn of energy throughout the whole day. You're going to be able to concentrate. You're going to be able to sleep better, get lots of benefits from taking this every day. This will help to slow down the aging process. By taking this, it's a month's supply. You mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even with just milk. I mix it with hummus, but you can mix it with yogurt or applesauce or some other soft food. But take it every day. And when you do this, you'll start feeling the effects within 72 hours. You'll get a steady burn of energy throughout the whole day. You're going to have more vitality. You're going to be more energetic. You're going to be moving around. You're going to notice that your musculature is increasing. You're going to also notice that your brain function is improving. You do this regularly, every day, for a year, and you're going to start noticing, whoa, you're slowing down the aging process. This stacks really well with the core protocol that I have. What's the core protocol? The foundation, multivitamin with the probiotic. The first pillar on that foundation, the max 35 or cleanse to boost up the immune system. The second pillar, C60, to soak up free radicals. Third pillar, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans to boost up the immune system and help with your cardiovascular system. And boomer boost to rev up your metabolism and increase your energy levels. And you get all these other benefits that I just mentioned. You do that protocol every day, you are going to slow down the aging process, boost up your immune system. You're going to have more vitality, more longevity. Please go to my store, get the Boomer Boost, use discount 5, all caps, discount 5. You get $5 off any order. You spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
What we saw is the opportunity for digital assets broadly, stablecoins in particular, to be used as a medium of exchange outside of the crypto world, what is today the fiat currency world. At some point, I think these digital asset wallets will be big enough and people will be comfortable enough using them. I think we'll have a flip from conventional payment mechanisms into stablecoin-based mechanisms.
Does that mean banks such as yourselves issuing stablecoins?
We could. We are issuing Hong Kong dollar stablecoins today. We're in a sandbox for...
Stablecoins are good for international transactions to not be hit so hard with transaction fees going from one currency to another. That's about it. I wouldn't play it. Crypto market is a manipulated asset. Stay away from it. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the C60. You can get it in avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, and also MCT coconut oil. You can get a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. It is cheaper per ounce if you get the higher ounce configuration. Take a teaspoon a day every day, preferably on an empty stomach, such as when you wake up in the morning. If you work out, take it before your workout so you're soaking up the free radicals during that workout, and you're going to notice that you recover quicker. In addition, C60 will soak up the free radicals at your neurons, in your vascular system, and in your other tissues. When you do that, your immune system will improve, your endocrine system will improve. At the neuron level, you're reducing stress, soaking up free radicals. You'll have more ATP because you'll have healthier mitochondria. You'll have better neuroplasticity. You'll have more dendritic connections. You'll be thinking faster and your memory will be better. At the vascular level, you're soaking up the free radicals and reducing the concentration of oxidized LDL, so you're reducing plaque buildup. At your other tissues, your cells are going to perform better because you're soaking up those free radicals, reducing stress, and allowing your mitochondria to be healthier, so have more energy. And with less stress and more energy, the cells and the tissues will perform better. When they perform better, guess what? Your body performs better. This is 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C. Take a teaspoon a day every day. This will also help the basal layer of your skin, so your skin will improve. You will look younger over time, especially if you stack this with resveratrol. And C60, when you take it over a year period, you're going to notice that you look younger. 1 year, just test this out. 1 year, take a before and after comparison. And you'll notice within 1 year of taking this, you look younger. You will feel better. Your immune system will be better. Your endocrine system will be better. And in some cases, your eyesight will be better. In addition, you will feel the effects of this within the first 2 months. You will notice you have more energy. Things are just, your body is just overall performing better. So please go to my store, get the C60, take it every day, a teaspoon a day, every day. You will look younger. You will have better functioning organ systems. And like I said, you can stack it in this larger protocol. That protocol, multivitamin with a probiotic. The first pillar, max 35 with or cleanse, that will help to boost up the immune system. That's the first pillar. The second pillar, C60, soak up those free radicals, slow down the aging process. The third pillar, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans. Bring down inflammation, help with the immune system and the endocrine system. And boomer boost to rev up your metabolism and your energy levels. You get other benefits also. But when you stack this, like I just said, multivitamin, probiotic, max 30 fiber cleanse, C60, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans, and the boomer boost, when you stack that together as a super powerful protocol to slow down the aging process. I am the most accurate, the most comprehensive, and the cheapest in terms of slowing down the aging process. My protocol is better than Brian Johnson's. Brian Johnson, the tech bro that spends $2 million a year trying to not age, you don't need to spend $2 million a year. All you got to do is a holistic approach with proper supplementation. What's that holistic approach? Drink filtered water. Stay away from processed foods. Reduce your sugar intake. Bring down stress by having mindfulness or some spirituality. Learn new things. Reading and writing, especially reading and writing and talking to people in the real world. Resistance training and some cardio, but more resistance than cardio. Make sure you do balancing and stretching exercises to activate those neurons and help activate that cerebellum. Build that musculature that you need. That's through the resistance training, especially your back muscles. Proper supplementation, which is that core and some of the other products that I have on my store. When you do this on a regular basis, you will slow down the aging process and reduce the effects of aging, and your epigenetics will be better. You will have a more youthful epigenetic profile, and your telomere lengths will be longer. Why? Because you have less stress causing the telomeres to shrink, and you're getting rid of senescent cells, which have short telomere lengths. And so the tissues that can regenerate are generating younger cells with longer telomere lengths. The bottom line is this: you can slow down the aging process and and when the body is healthy, it can heal some of the problem areas that you may have had for years. But if you're constantly inflamed, if you're constantly not putting your body in a state to heal, you're going to just age faster. And you're going to have much more energy by doing this. You'll have more vitality. I am the most comprehensive and the cheapest to get to the ultimate goal of slowing down the aging process. There are people that are more expensive, and there are people that are less effective. I am the most comprehensive on this subject matter. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Take this protocol, and you can customize it by going to my store, and you can pick and match them the way which system you want to target. But if you take that core protocol, it goes a long way to slowing down the aging process. You do it every day, you will have a better life. Please go to my store, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. You spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Get healthy in 2026. You're going to need to. And with a better immune system, the better off you are. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.